morning alarm buzzed at 5:30, just like it had for the past 6 years. Riley Chen reached over and silenced it with practiced ease, her eyes still heavy with sleep. The small studio apartment was dark, except for the streetlight filtering through the thin curtains. She sat up slowly, feeling the familiar ache in her feet from yesterday's double shift. Riley had turned 30 last month. Though she hadn't celebrated, there wasn't much to celebrate really, just another year of serving tables, saving pennies, and dreaming of something better. Her Aunt Patricia had offered to take her out for dinner, but Riley insisted on cooking at home instead. Why waste money at a restaurant when she worked at one? The bathroom mirror showed tired eyes and hair that needed a trim she couldn't quite afford yet. Riley splashed cold water on her face and got ready for another day at the Sterling Room, one of the fanciest restaurants in the city. It was the kind of place where a single meal cost more than her weekly grocery budget. She caught the 6:15 bus, squeezing between a businessman buried in his phone and a nursing student still wearing scrubs from her night shift. Riley knew most of the regular morning commuters by face, if not by name. There was something comforting about these familiar strangers who shared her early morning routine. Her Aunt Patricia always said Riley was too content with simple things. Maybe that was true. Riley didn't need designer clothes or fancy vacations. She just wanted to save enough to open a small bakery someday. Nothing grand, just a cozy neighborhood spot where people could enjoy fresh bread and pastries. She'd been putting away $50 each week for 3 years now. At this rate, she'd have enough for a down payment in another 5 years. Maybe 6. The restaurant kitchen was already alive with activity when Riley arrived. The smell of fresh herbs and simmering sauces filled the air as chefs prepped for the lunch service. She tied her apron, checked her order pad, and took her position in the dining room. "Table 12 needs water refills," called out Vincent, the head waiter who'd worked there for 15 years. He was one of the few people who treated Riley like she mattered. Most of the senior staff looked right through her. The lunch crowd was typical. Business executives discussing deals over expensive wine. Ladies who lunched picking at salads that cost $40. Riley moved between tables with quiet efficiency, refilling glasses before they were empty, clearing plates the moment guests finished, staying invisible until needed. "Miss. Miss?" A woman at table 7 snapped her fingers in the air. Riley recognized the type immediately. Designer handbag, diamond earrings that could probably pay Riley's rent for a year, and that particular expression that said the world existed to serve her. "Yes, ma'am. How can I help you?" Riley approached with her practiced smile. "This water has ice in it. I asked for no ice. Are you deaf?" The woman's voice carried across the dining room. Her 3 companions snickered. Riley glanced at the order slip. No special requests noted, but she'd learned long ago that arguing never helped. "I apologize. I'll bring you a new glass right away. And make sure it's filtered water this time. I can taste the difference, you know." All their water was filtered, but Riley just nodded and headed to the kitchen. Vincent gave her a sympathetic look as she passed. The evening shift was when the Sterling Room really came alive. Crystal chandeliers glowed above tables dressed in cream linens. The bar area buzzed with conversation and laughter. Riley had been assigned to the private dining section tonight, which usually meant bigger parties and hopefully better tips. At 7 o'clock, a group of 6 arrived for the reservation under the name Ashford. Riley recognized 2 of them from magazines. Victoria Ashford was some kind of real estate developer, always appearing in society pages wearing clothes that probably cost more than a car. The others looked equally polished and expensive. "Good evening," Riley greeted them warmly. "Welcome to the Sterling Room. Can I start you off with something to drink?" Victoria barely glanced at her. "Champagne." "The crystal. And make sure the glasses are properly chilled this time. Last time I was here, they were room temperature. Absolutely unacceptable." "Of course. I'll make sure everything is perfect." Riley had never served this table before, but she didn't bother correcting Victoria. She brought the champagne, perfectly chilled glasses balanced on her tray with practiced ease. As she poured, Victoria continued her conversation without acknowledging Riley's presence. "So then I told them, if they can't afford a downtown penthouse, they shouldn't be wasting my time," Victoria laughed. "Honestly, some people have no sense of their own limitations." Her friend, a man in a suit that probably cost 3 months of Riley's salary, nodded along. "The delusional middle class. They see us and think they can have the same lifestyle. It's almost sad. Riley kept her face neutral as she finished pouring. She'd heard worse. The wealthy had a way of talking about regular people like they were another species. Throughout dinner, Victoria's table grew louder and more demanding. The soup was too hot, then the replacement was too cold. The bread wasn't fresh enough. The lighting was wrong. Riley handled each complaint with patience, apologizing even when nothing was actually wrong. She was clearing their appetizer plates when it happened. The tray was loaded with dishes heavier than usual. As Riley turned from the table, her foot caught on the leg of a chair that someone had pushed out without looking. She stumbled, fighting to keep the tray balanced. Water glasses tilted, and though Riley managed to save most of them, water splashed onto the edge of Victoria's table, a few drops landing on the white tablecloth. The entire table went silent. Then Victoria stood up dramatically as if Riley had dumped an entire bucket on her. "Are you kidding me right now?" Victoria's voice rang through the private dining room. "Do you have any idea how clumsy that was? This tablecloth is soaked. My dress nearly got ruined." Riley looked at the tablecloth. Maybe 4 ounces of water had spilled, barely dampening a 6-inch section. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. Let me get fresh linens right away." "I apologize." "Sorry? You're sorry." Victoria turned to her friends. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. No training, no standards. They hire anyone off the street these days." She looked Riley up and down with obvious disdain. "Look at those shoes. Have they ever even been polished? And is that a stain on your apron? This is supposed to be a 5-star establishment." Riley felt heat creeping up her neck. Her shoes were old, yes, but clean. The small stain on her apron was from kitchen grease, barely visible. Victoria was making a scene over nothing. "I really apologize. I'll have the manager come speak with you immediately. And maybe invest in some proper footwear," one of Victoria's companions added, loud enough for neighboring tables to hear. "Those look like something from a thrift store." They were from a thrift store. Riley had found them 2 years ago for $8. The table erupted in laughter. Riley felt a dozen pairs of eyes on her from around the room. Her face burned with humiliation, but she kept her composure. "I'll get the manager," she repeated quietly, and walked away with as much dignity as she could gather. In the kitchen, she leaned against the wall for just a moment, taking slow breaths. Vincent appeared beside her. "They're terrible people," he said softly. "Don't let them get to you." "I'm fine," Riley said, though her hands were shaking slightly. "It's just part of the job." But as she went to find the manager, Riley wondered how many more years she could do this. How many more times she could smile and apologize while people treated her like she was worth nothing. She thought about her little savings account, her bakery dream that seemed to get further away instead of closer. The manager smoothed things over with Victoria's table, comping their appetizers and offering free dessert. They accepted with the air of people used to getting their way. Riley finished serving them professionally, though they continued making little comments about her throughout the meal, never quite quiet enough that she couldn't hear. When they finally left, Victoria didn't even glance at Riley. The tip was 12%. Riley cleared the table slowly, carefully folding the barely damp tablecloth. In the corner, she found a business card that had fallen from someone's purse. Victoria Ashford, it read. President and CEO, Ashford Development Group. Riley pocketed the card without really knowing why, then finished her shift. On the bus ride home, she stared out the window at the city lights, at the world that existed for people like Victoria Ashford. A world that would never include someone like her, or so she thought. Riley woke up the next morning still thinking about Victoria Ashford's cruel laughter. She'd dealt with difficult customers before, but something about last night felt different. Maybe it was turning 30. Maybe she was just tired of being treated like she didn't matter. Her phone showed 2 missed calls from an unknown number, probably spam. Riley deleted the notification and started getting ready for her Saturday shift. Weekends were the busiest, which meant better tips if she was lucky. She was eating toast at her small kitchen table when someone knocked on her door. Riley frowned. Her Aunt Patricia usually called before coming over, and the mailman never came this early. Through the peephole, she saw a man in an expensive gray suit holding a leather briefcase. Definitely not someone she knew. Riley kept the chain lock on as she opened the door a crack. "Can I help you?" "Good morning. Are you Riley Chen?" His voice was formal but not unfriendly. "Who's asking?" My name is Thomas Brennan. I'm an attorney with Brennan and Associates. I've been trying to reach you for several weeks. It's regarding a matter of inheritance. Riley's stomach dropped. Inheritance? Did something happen to my Aunt Patricia? No, nothing like that. This concerns your parents. May I come in? I have some documents I need to discuss with you. Riley's parents had died when she was 5 years old. Car accident, that's all she'd ever been told. Her memories of them were fuzzy at best. A woman with a kind smile, a man who used to lift her onto his shoulders, not much else. My parents didn't have anything to leave behind. They were just regular people. Ms. Chen, I really need to speak with you inside. I promise this is legitimate. Thomas pulled out a business card and his bar association identification. Everything looked official. Against her better judgment, Riley let him in. Her apartment suddenly seemed even smaller with this polished lawyer standing in it. He glanced around but had the courtesy not to look judgmental. Please sit down. Riley gestured to her second-hand couch. Can I get you some coffee or something? No, thank you. I appreciate your hospitality. Thomas set his briefcase on the coffee table and clicked it open. Ms. Chen, what I'm about to tell you will sound unbelievable. I ask that you hear me out completely before reacting. Riley's heart was beating faster now. Okay. Your father's name wasn't David Chen, it was Jonathan Hartwell. Your mother's name wasn't Lisa, it was Catherine Hartwell. They changed their identities 30 years ago to escape threats from business rivals. What? That's crazy. My father worked in construction. My mother was a teacher. Those were the identities they assumed, yes. But before that, your father was one of the wealthiest industrialists in North America. He owned Hartwell Industries, a conglomerate worth billions. Riley laughed, but it came out shaky. I think you have the wrong person. My parents died broke. I was raised by my aunt in a tiny apartment. If we had money, don't you think our lives would have been different? Thomas pulled out a folder and opened it carefully. Inside was a photograph, old and slightly faded. It showed a young couple standing in front of a massive estate. The man looked familiar in a way that made Riley's chest tighten. He had her eyes, her nose. This is your father at age 35 before he disappeared from public life. Riley picked up the photo with trembling hands. The woman next to the man had Riley's smile, her cheekbones. But they were dressed like royalty, not like the vague memories Riley had of her parents in simple clothes. I don't understand. Your father had enemies, competitors who used illegal means to try to destroy him. When threats were made against your mother and you, he made a choice. He liquidated certain assets, placed the majority of his wealth into protected trusts, and disappeared. He and your mother became David and Lisa Chen. They moved to this city and lived ordinary lives to keep you safe. If this is true, why didn't anyone tell me? Why did my aunt raise me in poverty? Your Aunt Patricia was your mother's sister. She was one of the few people who knew the truth. When your parents died in that accident, you were only 5 years old. The terms of the trust your father established were very specific. You couldn't access the inheritance until your 30th birthday. Your aunt was bound by legal agreements not to tell you until then. She raised you simply because that's what your parents wanted. They believed hard work and humility would make you a better person than growing up wealthy. Riley stood up and walked to her window, trying to process this. This is insane. You're telling me I'm some kind of secret billionaire? Not exactly. You turned 30 last month, correct? Yes. As of your 30th birthday, you became the sole beneficiary of the Hartwell Trust. You own Hartwell Industries, which includes commercial real estate, manufacturing facilities, technology patents, and various other assets. The current estimated worth is approximately $3.2 billion. The number was so large it didn't even sound real. Riley turned around. $3 billion? That's not possible. I have all the documentation here. DNA tests that confirm your identity, your birth certificate under your real name, legal documents establishing the trust, account statements, property deeds. Thomas spread papers across the coffee table like he was dealing cards. Your father spent years setting this up to protect you. He wanted you to have a normal childhood, to understand the value of regular life before inheriting this responsibility. Riley sank back onto the couch, staring at the papers. Her whole life felt like a lie suddenly. Does my aunt know you're here? I spoke with Patricia 2 weeks ago. She confirmed everything. She said you deserve to hear it from me first with all the legal documentation. She wants to talk to you whenever you're ready. Why wouldn't she just tell me herself? I think she was afraid. She's raised you for 25 years on a modest income. She's worried you'll feel betrayed, that she kept this secret for so long. Riley's mind was spinning. She thought about every struggle, every time she'd chosen the cheaper option. Every dream she'd put off because of money. Her aunt had known the whole time that Riley would eventually inherit billions, but let her work herself exhausted serving tables. "I need to think," Riley said quietly. "This is too much, of course. I understand this is overwhelming." Thomas pulled a business card from his pocket. "My number's on here. When you're ready, call me. We'll need to go through the legal process of transferring everything into your name, introducing you to the board of directors at Hartwell Industries, and setting up accounts. But there's no rush. Take whatever time you need." After Thomas left, Riley sat in silence for a long time. The papers were still spread across her coffee table like evidence of some elaborate prank. But they looked real. The photographs, the documents, all of it looked official. She picked up her phone and called her aunt. "Riley?" Patricia answered on the first ring, her voice tight with worry. "Did the lawyer come? Did he talk to you? Why didn't you tell me?" Riley's voice cracked. "Oh, honey, I wanted to. Every single day for 25 years I wanted to. But your parents made me promise. They had their reasons. They wanted you to grow up normal, to understand real life." "Normal? Aunt Patricia, I've been working myself to death trying to save for a tiny bakery. You watched me struggle and never said anything. Your parents believed that wealth corrupts people. They wanted you to learn the value of hard work, the importance of treating everyone with respect regardless of their status. Look at how you turned out. You're kind, humble, hardworking. Would you be the same person if you'd grown up knowing you were an heiress?" Riley wiped tears from her cheeks. "I don't even know who I am anymore. You're exactly who you've always been. The money doesn't change that. But what you do with it, that will define who you become." They talked for another hour. Patricia explained what she knew about Riley's real parents, about the life they'd left behind to protect their daughter. It sounded like something from a movie, not real life. After hanging up, Riley called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. She spent the weekend reading through all the documents Thomas had left. Financial statements that made her dizzy, property lists that went on for pages, information about companies she'd never heard of that apparently belonged to her now. By Sunday evening, Riley had made a decision. She wasn't ready to step into this new life yet. She needed to understand who she really was, what mattered to her, before everything changed forever. On Monday morning, she went back to work at the Sterling Room. Vincent did a double take when he saw her. "You okay? You never call in sick." "I'm fine. Just needed a couple days." The lunch shift was busy as usual. Riley moved through her routine, but everything felt different now. She watched the wealthy customers with new eyes. Any one of them could be her peers, technically. She was wealthier than most of them, probably, but they'd never know it looking at her. That evening, Thomas called. "Have you had time to think?" "I have. I want to keep this quiet for a while. I'm not ready to tell anyone." "That's your right. But we should start the legal transfer process. And there's a charity gala this Saturday evening. It would be a good opportunity for you to see how these events work. Maybe observe some of the people you'll be dealing with as the head of Hartwell Industries." Riley thought about Victoria Ashford and her cruel friends, the people who'd laughed at her worn shoes. "Will I have to talk to anyone?" The next 2 weeks felt like drinking from a fire hose. Riley met with lawyers, accountants, and financial advisors who explained her assets in terms that made her head spin. She owned 17 commercial properties. She had stakes in technology companies she'd never heard of. Her investment portfolio alone was worth more than most small countries. But Riley insisted on keeping her job at the Sterling Room. Thomas thought she was crazy, but she had her reasons. She wasn't ready to dive into the deep end of high society. She needed to keep one foot in her real life, the life she understood. "Your serving table's worth $10 billion. Vincent joked when she told him she was staying. She'd said she got a small inheritance, nothing major, just enough to be comfortable. He didn't need to know the truth. "These tables won't serve themselves," Riley said with a smile. During the day, she worked her shifts. At night, she studied financial reports and learned about the businesses she now controlled. Thomas had arranged for her to meet with the board of directors next month. They still thought they were waiting for the mysterious heir to appear. None of them knew she'd already been serving some of them dinner. Riley also began investigating Victoria Ashford's development project. The more she learned, the angrier she became. The community center sat on prime real estate in a neighborhood that was slowly being gentrified. Families who'd lived there for generations were being pushed out by rising rents. The center was one of the last gathering places for the original community. Victoria's company, Ashford Development, had already bought up 3 surrounding blocks. The community center was the final piece they needed to build their luxury condo complex. And they needed Hartwell Development Corporation's approval because Hartwell owned the infrastructure company that would need to do the utility work. "They've offered us a very generous partnership deal," Thomas explained during one of their evening meetings. 30% of the profits. It's a lot of money. "How much does the community center mean to the neighborhood?" Riley asked. "Honestly? It's everything. Free after-school programs, job training, community meals for seniors. If it closes, those people have nowhere else to go. Then we're not approving it. I want to make a counteroffer. Hartwell Development will invest $20 million into renovating and expanding the community center. We'll also buy the surrounding block to ensure it stays affordable housing." Thomas stared at her. "Riley, that's a lot of money to spend on something that won't generate profit. I'm not interested in that kind of profit. What's the point of having billions if I can't help people who actually need it?" "Victoria Ashford will not be happy. She's been planning this project for 2 years. Riley smiled. "I'm counting on it." On Thursday evening, Riley was working the private dining section again when she heard familiar voices. Her stomach dropped. Victoria Ashford and 3 members of her group had reservations. Riley took a breath and approached their table professionally. "Good evening. Welcome back to the Sterling Room." Victoria glanced up briefly. "Oh, you. Try not to spill anything tonight." Her companion snickered. Riley kept her expression neutral. "Of course. Can I start you with drinks?" As Riley took their order, she listened to their conversation. They were celebrating. Victoria had just received confirmation that the final permits for the community center demolition were approved. All she needed now was Hartwell Development's signature on the partnership agreement. "It's been a long process, but it's finally happening," Victoria said, raising her wine glass. "By this time next year, we'll have broken ground on the most exclusive residential complex this city has ever seen." "What about the families who use that community center?" one of Victoria's friends asked. She seemed younger than the others, maybe new to the group. "What about them?" Victoria replied. "They don't own property. They're renters. They can rent somewhere else. That's how the market works. If they can't afford to live in a developing neighborhood, that's not my problem." "But don't they have children in programs there? There are other community centers across town." "They have buses, don't they?" Victoria laughed. "Honestly, Amanda, you're too soft. This is business. Sentiment doesn't pay the bills." Riley set down their appetizers with steady hands, though inside she was seething. She thought about the kids she tutored at that community center. 8-year-old Lily, who was finally learning to read. Teenage Marcus, who came every day after school because home wasn't safe. Mrs. Johnson, who got her only hot meal of the day at the senior lunch program. Victoria didn't see people. She saw obstacles and opportunities for profit. After Riley brought their entrees, she heard Victoria mention the Hartwell Development Corporation. The heir finally emerged, apparently, taking over the company next month. "I'm meeting with their representatives next week to finalize the partnership. It's just a formality. The deal is too good for them to refuse." Riley allowed herself a small smile as she walked away. Victoria had no idea that the heir she'd be meeting had already served her dinner multiple times. The next morning, Riley met with Thomas and 2 other lawyers to prepare for the announcement. They'd scheduled a board meeting at Hartwell Industries headquarters for the following Tuesday. Riley would be introduced as the new CEO and majority shareholder. "Are you ready for this?" Thomas asked. Riley looked at her reflection in the conference room window. She'd spent 30 years being invisible, being dismissed, being treated like she didn't matter. In 4 days, she'd walk into a room full of powerful people and they'd have to listen to her. "I'm ready." That Saturday, Riley went to the community center like she did most weekends. She found Mrs. Chen, the director, in her office looking stressed. "Everything okay?" Riley asked. Mrs. Chen looked up with tired eyes. "Oh, Riley, I didn't see you come in. I'm just dealing with some tough news. The property developers are moving forward with their plans. We have until March to vacate the building. I'm trying to figure out where to relocate, but nothing in the area is affordable." "What if you didn't have to relocate?" Riley said carefully. "That would be a miracle. But miracles don't happen to places like this." Riley wanted so badly to tell her that a miracle was coming, that she had the power to save this place. But the announcement hadn't been made yet. She couldn't risk it getting back to Victoria somehow. "Don't give up hope," was all Riley could say. She spent the afternoon helping kids with homework and serving lunch to seniors. Ben, the architect she'd met at the gala, showed up around 3. Apparently he volunteered here too, running a workshop on sustainable building design for teenagers. "Riley, I didn't know you volunteered here," he said when he spotted her. "Every Saturday for the past 2 years. You? About 6 months. I heard about the demolition plans and wanted to help while this place still exists." He shook his head sadly. "It's criminal what they're doing. This neighborhood needs this center." They talked between activities, and Riley found herself enjoying his company more than she expected. He wasn't wealthy or connected, just genuinely cared about building things that mattered. It was refreshing compared to the people she'd been meeting in boardrooms. "Can I ask you something?" Ben said as they cleaned up the teen workshop. "That night at the gala, you seemed really interested when I talked about community-focused architecture. Was that just being polite?" "No, I meant it. I think cities should be built for people who live in them, not just people who profit from them. That's a rare perspective these days, especially at events like that gala." He paused. "What do you do for work? You mentioned being between careers." Riley thought about how to answer. In 4 days, the truth would be public anyway. "I'm about to start a new job in corporate leadership, but I'm trying to hold on to perspectives like this. It's easy to lose sight of what matters when you're surrounded by money and power." "Good for you. Don't let them change you. The world needs more leaders who actually care about people." Monday night, Riley barely slept. She'd chosen her outfit carefully for tomorrow's meeting. Professional but not flashy. She wanted to command respect without looking like she was trying too hard. Tuesday morning arrived too quickly. Thomas picked her up at 7 to go over final details before the 9 o'clock board meeting. "Remember, they're expecting someone groomed for this role since birth," Thomas said in the car. "You're going to surprise them. In a good way or a bad way? That depends on how you handle it. Be confident. You own the company. They work for you, not the other way around." Hartwell Industries headquarters was a gleaming tower of glass and steel downtown. Riley had walked past it 1,000 times on her way to work, never imagining she owned it. Security greeted Thomas by name and gave Riley a visitor badge, not knowing she was actually the owner. The executive floor was all marble and expensive art. An assistant led them to the boardroom where 12 people sat around a massive table. Riley recognized several faces. These were the people who made million-dollar decisions daily. The chairman, an older man named Robert Chen, stood when they entered. "Thomas, good to see you. Is Ms. Hartwell ready to join us?" "She's here," Thomas said, stepping aside. Riley walked forward and took the seat at the head of the table. The room went completely silent. "Good morning. I'm Riley Hartwell, Dow." Riley woke up at 5:30 by habit, then remembered she didn't need to catch the early bus anymore. Still, she got up and made coffee in her small kitchen, looking around the studio apartment that had been her home for 6 years. She could move anywhere now, buy a mansion, live in luxury. But this place felt real in a way that made her reluctant to leave. Her phone showed a text from Thomas. "Meeting room B is prepared. I'll be there at 1:30 to brief you. Remember, you're in control of this meeting." Riley smiled. She'd spent the last evening carefully planning what she wanted to say to Victoria Ashford. Not to humiliate her exactly, but to make a point. Money didn't give you the right to treat people as worthless. She dressed carefully in a tailored navy suit that Thomas had helped her pick out. Professional, expensive, but not flashy. Her hair was pulled back simply. Minimal jewelry. She wanted Victoria to focus on what she was saying, not what she was wearing. At 1 o'clock, Riley arrived at Hartwell Industries headquarters. This time, security recognized her immediately. "Good afternoon, Ms. Hartwell," the guard said with respect that still felt strange to hear. Riley took the elevator to the executive floor. The conference room was pristine, the long table polished to a mirror shine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. Thomas was already there reviewing documents. "Ready?" he asked. "More than ready." "Where will Victoria sit?" "Typically, guests sit on that side." He gestured to the chairs facing the windows. "You'll be here at the head of the table." "Perfect. She'll have the light in her eyes. Makes it harder to maintain that superior attitude." Thomas raised an eyebrow. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." At exactly 2 o'clock, Thomas's assistant called. Miss Ashford is here with her associate. Send them in, Riley said calmly. The door opened and Victoria Ashford walked in wearing a cream designer suit and her signature air of superiority. She was accompanied by a nervous-looking young man carrying a briefcase. Victoria's eyes swept the room, clearly expecting to see corporate executives ready to be intimidated. Instead, she saw Riley sitting at the head of the table. Victoria stopped mid-stride. Her perfectly composed face flickered with confusion, then recognition, then disbelief. "What is she doing here?" Victoria asked Thomas as if Riley couldn't speak for herself. "Ms. Ashford, I'd like to introduce you to Riley Hartwell, CEO and majority shareholder of Hartwell Industries." The color drained from Victoria's face. Her associate's briefcase nearly slipped from his hands. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. "That's impossible," Victoria finally said. "The Hartwell heir has been missing for decades. She can't be. She's a waitress." "I was a waitress," Riley corrected calmly, among other things. "Please sit down. We have business to discuss." Victoria didn't move. She was staring at Riley like she'd seen a ghost. Riley could practically see her brain trying to process this information, replaying every interaction they'd had at the Sterling Room. The heir was supposed to be groomed for this, Victoria said weakly. "Someone educated, prepared. I was prepared. Just not in the way you expected." "Please sit down, Ms. Ashford. I don't like to repeat myself." There was steel in Riley's voice now. Victoria heard it and slowly sank into a chair. Her associate followed, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else. Riley opened the folder in front of her. "I understand you're here to discuss the partnership proposal for the community center development project." "Yes, we had an agreement pending approval," Victoria said, trying to regain her composure. "It's a very lucrative opportunity for both our companies. I've brought updated projections that show—" "I've reviewed your proposal thoroughly," Riley interrupted. "And the answer is no." "No? You can't just say no. This project has been in development for 2 years. We've invested millions in planning and permits. That's unfortunate. You should have secured all approvals before making those investments. Hartwell Development Corporation will not be partnering with Ashford Development on this project." Victoria's face was turning red. "This is personal. You're doing this because of what happened at the restaurant. That's incredibly unprofessional." Riley leaned back in her chair. "What happened at the restaurant taught me something valuable about your character, Ms. Ashford. The way you treated me, a woman you thought had no power, showed me exactly who you are. You judge people entirely by their wealth and status. You see anyone below your economic level as less than human. I was having a bad day. I apologized." "No, you didn't. You never apologized. Not even once. And it wasn't just one bad day. I served your table multiple times. Each time you treated service staff like we were props, not people. You mocked my shoes. You laughed about the delusional middle class while I stood there holding your plates." Victoria opened her mouth, then closed it. Her associate was staring at his hands. "But you're right about one thing," Riley continued. "This isn't personal. It's business. And the business case against your proposal is clear. You want to demolish a community center that serves hundreds of families, so you can build luxury condos that maybe 30 wealthy families will live in. The math doesn't work for the community. The math works perfectly for profit margins," Victoria argued. "That's what business is about." "That's what you think business is about. I think differently. Hartwell Industries will be investing $20 million into renovating and expanding the community center. We're also purchasing the surrounding block to ensure it remains affordable housing. You're destroying my project." Victoria's voice was shaking now. With anger or fear, Riley couldn't tell. "No, I'm stopping you from destroying a community. There's a difference. This is ridiculous. I want to speak to the board, to someone who understands business." "You've had this position for what, a week? You don't know what you're doing." Riley's expression hardened. "I had this position for 3 days. In that time, I've learned that this company owns 47 properties across the city. 11 of them are in developing neighborhoods where your company is also active. I control infrastructure contracts, zoning approvals, and development permits that you need for 6 other projects." She let that sink in while Victoria's face went pale again. "Now, I'm not interested in destroying your business," Riley continued, "but I am interested in changing how development happens in this city. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to withdraw your community center proposal. In exchange, Hartwell will approve your mixed-use project on 4th Street, provided you agree to dedicate 30% of the units to affordable housing. 30%? That's insane. It'll cut my profit in half. You'll still make money, just not as much, but more people will benefit. That's called sustainable development, Ms. Ashford. You should look into it. Victoria stood abruptly. This is blackmail. No, this is business. You can accept my terms, or I can decline partnerships on all 6 of your pending projects. Your choice. For a moment, Riley thought Victoria might walk out, but then her associate leaned over and whispered something urgent. Victoria's shoulders sagged slightly. She was trapped and she knew it. Fine, Victoria bit out. I'll accept your terms. But this isn't over. Actually, it is. One more thing, Ms. Ashford. I'm going to be very active in this industry. You'll likely encounter me at various business functions and charity events. I expect you to treat service staff at those events with respect. If I hear that you're still snapping fingers at waiters or mocking people for their clothes, I'll remember it when your next project needs approval. Victoria's jaw clenched. Understood. Good. Thomas will send over the revised contracts. Thank you for your time. Victoria and her associate left without another word. The moment the door closed, Riley exhaled deeply. Her hands were shaking slightly from adrenaline. That was intense, Thomas said. How do you feel? Like I might throw up? But also like I just did something important. You did. Word of this will spread fast. Every developer in the city will know that Hartwell Industries has new leadership with very different priorities. Good. Let them know. Riley's phone buzzed. A text from Ben Morrison. Hey, I heard the craziest rumor. Someone said the Hartwell heir is a woman in her 30s who used to work service jobs. Any chance you know if that's true? Riley smiled and texted back. It's true. It's me. Her phone immediately rang. Ben's voice was shocked. You're kidding. Nope. Remember when I said I was starting a new job in corporate leadership? Surprise. Riley, wow, I don't even know what to say. You're a billionaire? Technically. But I'm still me. Still the same person who volunteers at the community center on Saturdays. Actually, that's something I wanted to talk to you about. Hartwell is investing $20 million into renovating that center. We need an architect. Interested? Are you serious? That's my dream project, I know. That's why I'm asking. But I need someone who'll design it for the community, not for awards or magazine covers. Can you do that? Riley, I would be honored. They talked for another 20 minutes about possibilities for the renovation. Ben's enthusiasm was infectious, reminding Riley why she was doing all this. Not for power or prestige, but to make real differences in people's lives. That evening, Riley went back to the Sterling room one last time. She'd called ahead and arranged to meet with Vincent and the other servers who'd been kind to her. I need to tell you all something, she said when 3 months had passed since Riley stepped into her role as CEO of Hartwell Industries. The business section called her the People's Billionaire. Social media loved her story, but the reality was more complicated than headlines suggested. Riley sat in her new office, a space that still felt too large and too fancy. She'd replaced the intimidating leather furniture with more comfortable pieces. Added plants. Put up photos of the community center and the families who used it. She wanted to remember why she was doing this. Thomas knocked and entered with his usual armload of documents. Morning briefing. The community center renovation is ahead of schedule. Ben says the new computer lab should be finished next week. That's great news. Victoria Ashford's company filed for bankruptcy protection yesterday. Turns out she'd over-leveraged herself on projects expecting our partnerships. When those fell through, she couldn't cover her debts. Riley felt a complex mix of emotions. She hadn't wanted to destroy Victoria's business. She just wanted to stop unethical projects. What happens to her employees? Most will lose their jobs. About 60 people. Can we hire any of them? The ones who weren't making the decisions, just doing their work. Thomas smiled. Already looked into it. 15 of them have skills we can use. HR is reaching out today. Good, what else? You have 7 requests for interviews, 4 charity gala invitations, and 2 people claiming to be long-lost relatives hoping for money. Hard pass on the interviews for now. Pick one charity gala that supports education or housing, and tell the relatives I'm sorry, but DNA tests or it didn't happen. After Thomas left, Riley turned to her computer and opened the project tracker she'd created. Since taking over, Hartwell Industries had launched 8 community development initiatives. They'd created a scholarship fund for service workers. They'd invested in affordable housing across 4 neighborhoods. And they'd still managed to increase the company's overall value by 12%. Turned out you could do good and do well at the same time. Who knew? Her phone rang. Aunt Patricia. Just checking in, her aunt said. Making sure you're eating real food and not just working 24 hours a day. I had a salad for lunch. Riley Chen Hartwell, that is not a real meal. Riley smiled. Her aunt still used both last names like she couldn't quite reconcile the 2 parts of Riley's identity. I promise I'll eat a proper dinner. How are you? I'm good. Proud. A little overwhelmed by all the attention, honestly. The neighbors keep asking me about you. Some lady from a magazine wanted to interview me about raising a billionaire on a working-class income. You can say no to all that. You don't owe anyone your story, I know. I just worry sometimes that I did the wrong thing, keeping the truth from you for so long. Aunt Patricia, we've talked about this. You did what my parents asked, and honestly, growing up the way I did made me who I am. I don't regret any of it. Not even the hard parts? Riley thought about all those early morning bus rides, the aching feet after double shifts, the times she'd had to choose between groceries and new shoes. Not even the hard parts. They taught me what matters. After hanging up, Riley reviewed the afternoon schedule. At 2, she had a meeting with Ben to review final designs for the community center. At 4, a video call with international division heads. At 6, dinner with potential investors interested in funding ethical development projects. But first, she had somewhere to be. Riley grabbed her jacket and told her assistant she'd be gone for a couple hours. The driver took her across town to a neighborhood she'd never visited before this week. The buildings here were run down, graffiti marking several walls. Kids played in a parking lot because there was no playground. She got out at a boarded-up warehouse that Hartwell Industries had purchased last month. A small group waited for her. Local community leaders, City Councilwoman Davis and Ben with his architectural plans. Ms. Hartwell, Councilwoman Davis greeted her warmly. Thank you for coming in person. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. If we're going to develop something here, I need to see it myself. Talk to people who live here. They walked the perimeter of the property while Ben explained his vision. Mixed-use development with ground-floor shops, affordable apartments above, a community garden in back, and a small park for kids. 30% of units will be subsidized, Ben said. Another 40% at below-market rates. The remaining 30% at market rate to help fund the project. We'll prioritize local businesses for the retail spaces. How long have people in this neighborhood been asking for something like this? Riley asked the community leaders. An older woman named Gloria spoke up. 20 years at least. But every developer who came through wanted to build luxury condos and push us out. You're the first person who's asked what we actually need. What do you need? What you're describing. Affordable places to live, space for local businesses, somewhere safe for children. We don't want handouts. We just want a fair chance. Riley made notes on her phone. What else? What are we missing? They talked for an hour. The community needed childcare facilities. They needed a space for job training programs. They needed better bus connections. Riley listened to all of it, asking questions, understanding the real problems. We can't solve everything at once, she finally said, but we can start. Ben? Add a community room on the ground floor for job training and meetings. Can we also include a child care center? We can if we adjust the parking structure. Use the basement level instead of ground level. Create more ground floor space. Do it. I want this project to be a model for development that actually serves the community. As Riley walked back to her car, Gloria followed her. Can I ask you something? Gloria said. Why are you doing this? You're a billionaire. You could be living on a beach somewhere, not worrying about people like us. Riley thought about how to answer. Because I was people like you 3 months ago. I worked tables, took the bus, struggled to save money. I know what it's like to feel invisible. And now that I have resources, I can't just ignore that experience. It would be a waste of everything I learned. Gloria smiled. Your parents would be proud. Real proud. Back at the office, Riley found Ben waiting with the final community center designs. They spread the blueprints across her conference table. It's beautiful, Riley said, tracing the layout with her finger. You kept the original building's character but made it completely functional. That was the goal. Honor what was there while improving it. The kids are going to love the new playground. And the seniors will have a dedicated wing with activities and meal services. When's the opening? 6 weeks. We're on schedule and under budget, actually. Under budget? How'd you manage that? Ben grinned. Turns out when you treat contractors fairly and pay them properly, they work more efficiently. Who knew? Revolutionary concept, Riley laughed. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. She glanced at it and her smile faded. The headline read, "Former developer Victoria Ashford speaks out. Hartwell heir destroyed my business out of personal revenge." "You should probably read that," Ben said. Noticing her expression, Riley opened the article. Victoria had given an interview claiming that Riley had targeted her personally, using her corporate power to crush competition. She portrayed herself as a victim of Riley's vindictiveness, making no mention of the community center or her own unethical practices. "She's not entirely wrong," Riley said quietly. "I did target her company specifically, because her projects were harmful. That's not revenge, that's responsibility. Try explaining that to people who just read headlines." Thomas appeared in the doorway. "I assume you saw the article. PR wants to know how to respond. What are our options? We can issue a statement clarifying the business reasons behind our decisions. We can ignore it completely, or you can do an interview presenting your side." Riley thought about it. Part of her wanted to ignore the whole thing, but another part knew that silence could be interpreted as guilt. Set up an interview, but not with a major outlet. Find a good local reporter who covers community development. I want to talk about what we're actually doing, not defend myself against accusations. The interview happened 2 days later with Helen Park, a reporter for the local paper who'd been covering housing issues for a decade. They met at the community center construction site. "So, Victoria Ashford says you destroyed her business out of revenge," Helen said. "Recorder running. What's your response?" "I denied partnerships on projects that would have harmed communities. Ashford Development's business model relied on displacing low-income residents for luxury development. I wasn't interested in participating in that regardless of profit. But you must have known it would hurt her company." "I knew it would affect her bottom line, yes. But business consequences aren't the same as personal revenge. I'm not in this role to make friends with other billionaires. I'm here to use resources responsibly. That's an unusual philosophy for a CEO. Maybe. But I spent 6 years working a job, WW.